Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Shepard. Welcome to Shep, Shower, and Shave on this edition, live from Fifth Avenue in Royal Oak. We talk with one of my favorite people, one of my favorite ex-Detroit athletes, one of my favorite ex-Detroit Lions, Marc Spindler. We're going to talk about his career, about his family life right now, his success in the private sector, and one of his favorite topics, hunting and fishing. That's up next. In Royal Oak from Fifth Avenue, always a premier destination here in Royal Oak. Over 36 cold beers on tap, great food and drink specials, a kitchen that is open until 2 a.m., 40, count them, 40 HD TVs and a 14-foot HD projection screen. We are right now in the patio where you get half-off wine, specialty cocktails, food specials. This is where we do Shep, Shower, and Shave. And I will call him Spin Dog, because that's what we used to call him when we used to work together in radio. And he was excellent at it, by the way. And he joins us here on Shep, Shower, and Shave. You look great. You really do. I'm so glad. When you told me you were going to come on with us, I was really excited because I love talking with you. And this is going to be really hard to put into just an hour because there's a lot of things that we love talking about. How are you?
I'm doing great.
How is the private sector? Because you have thrived. And we hear athletes sometimes go off and do their own things. You have done just that. How have you done?
Well, I mean, we have done very well. I mean, my wife and myself and my family have been blessed. I mean, it really comes back to work ethic. I mean, everything that I've learned, probably growing up as a child, watching my father, how labor intensive things were, how difficult things were at home, and then, realizing how hard you work to make it to the National Football League, play 9 years in the NFL. But for me, as soon as the game ended, a portion of that game ended. And I knew, and I had always said this, I mean, I would judge how successful I was by the husband I was, by the father I was, and what it was that defined me after football. I mean, because in one sense, and not to, diminish what I've accomplished and what a lot of professional athletes accomplished, but football came easy to me. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of talent. I mean, I've always prayed that God gave me the work ethic to use that talent, and which He did for the most part, and which I utilized for the most part. But, for the most part, it was a childhood game. We all played that game. I kept that game in perspective, and it treated me very well, and it afforded me many opportunities that few men will ever know. But all in all, I kept in perspective, and I knew when the ball stopped bouncing, what was I going to do next? What was going to be my Super Bowl? Yeah. And so, you just take everything that you learned. I mean, just about everything that you learned, and you apply it to every day. Because as I try to teach. Not youths, but I try to teach the youths today, I have an opportunity or forum to talk to them, that the ball stops bouncing. Someone taught me that a while ago, and the ball does stop bouncing. And I use myself. I said, son, or, if it's a young lady, I said, look, I played 9 years in the National Football League. The ball stopped bouncing for me. Mm-hmm. You're just in high school, so eventually the ball is going to start bouncing a lot sooner. So you better prepare yourself afterwards. But the life lessons and the skill set that I learned, and the discipline that I learned through going through everything that you had to go through to become a professional athlete, is what I apply every day. And what I've always said, and what I try to teach and educate the parents to, is that the real arena is the arena of life. Yeah. And that's why I say, get your children involved in anything competitive. And some people fought me on this and said, oh, you're just all about sports. I said, no, it's not what I said. I said anything competitive. It just so happens that sports, offers the broadest scale of competitiveness, because when you open that front door, Shep, when I open it on Monday morning and I start to head towards the airport to fly to Chicago to run my businesses, I can tell you that is the most competitive venue you will ever play in front of, be in front of, compete with or against. It makes playing at the Pontiac Silverdome in front of 85,000 people look like, a drop in a bucket.
I knew a long time ago when you and I first started working together that you were a great dad and a great husband. And there is a persona you had on the football field while at the University of Pittsburgh, with Detroit, with the Bears, for example, that didn't always mesh with the type of guy you were at home with your family and with your beautiful wife? Why was there such a contrast there?
I learned, I learned that, I eventually learned that once you cross that white line, whether you were coming off the field, it was over, leave it there. And then when you went back on, that field and you crossed that line, you had to have a switch. And so I still have a switch, trust me. My kids will be the first one to tell you, and my wife will be the first one to tell you I have a switch, and sometimes that switch still goes off, at the home front, which sometimes rightfully it has to. But I just think I had an understanding that, the person who I had to transform and become on that football field was different than the father, the husband, the mentor I had to be on the home front. You just got to have that understanding. That's what it's about.
You grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, right?
Scranton, PA.
Scranton, PA.
That's how we like to say.
You had two brothers. You had
three brothers.
You had
two brothers.
No,
I got two.
There were three boys and one girl.
That post-concussion stuff.
That's
two,
all right.
Two brothers and a sister.
Yeah, the train's rolling by here, so I'll continue with the question.
Here the train a-coming.
So you had two brothers and you had a sister, and you mentioned your father and the impact that your father had because of his work ethic. What did your dad do, and what did you learn most from the way your father worked day in and day out?
What did Big George do?
What did Big George do?
Big George did not compromise. He did not compromise. He picked up his lunch bucket, and he went to work every single day. And so he set an example of what you needed to do, but he also sent the message of what he did not want you to do. And he would take us every summer to the factory, the sweatshop, where he made suits, coats, and ties. And he would take us for our summer vacation. Summer vacation, my father always volunteered to redo the plant. And so we would go and we would work there, and he would say the reason why he was bringing us to do that, and he made my brothers do an internship there every single summer. And when it came my turn, I was like, no, Dad, I get it. I'm like, no, I got the message. I lived vicariously through Jimmy and George's eyes. I'm good. I understand what you mean. They must not have got the message, Dad. And so,
because you were the youngest of the three boys.
And he didn't compromise. Today's parents compromise.
Yeah, I
mean, there was no compromise. Timeouts. I mean, I say this sincerely. I heard a comedian say this the other day. He must have stole it from me. The only timeout that my father ever took or gave is after he beat the heck out of you for like 30 minutes, and he had to call a timeout just to get a breather to regather himself to come at you in the third and fourth quarter. And that's I am not over dramatizing that one bit.
Okay.
I mean, not one bit. I mean, he made a 2x4 with a handle on it for my mother.
But there had to be a time where he said, okay, Mark, you're too big for this now. Because you're bigger than your brothers.
No.
Right? Your brothers are tough SOBs, but they're not as big as you are. There had to be a time where George said, all right, I've got to find a different way to try and punish Mark because he's too big to handle this stuff anymore.
No, he,
really?
In his mindset, and this is what he always said, he said, son, as long as they're making Louisville Sluggers, I'll be good. And about the time you're coming around that corner, it's going to take 5 plastic surgeons to put your head back together again. And that was the message that he sent.
Why did that work? Because you know what it's like today. Listen, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I agree. I don't have too many parents today, in my mind, want to be their kid's best friend. Why did it work for you, your two brothers, and your sister? And how do you deviate from that type of lesson planning for your kids?
Right. That's a great question. That's a really great question. How it worked was respect and fear, rituals and habits. I mean, this is what you grew up with. This is what the only thing that you knew, right? So, I mean, I didn't know any other way. And that's the problem. Once you get exposed, like when I went off to college, like I did not, rarely swore when I was at home. 9th grade, 9 o'clock, 10th grade, 10 o'clock, 11th grade, 11 o'clock, 12th grade, 12 o'clock. Son, it's a long hallway. It was 4 feet long. That's all it was. But it was long. And you knew what that meant. That meant if you broke that code, then he'd be waiting at the end of it. And so discipline, rituals, habits, no compromise. And that was the only way that we knew. Now, when I got a chance to go away to college, and I've learned a lot of bad habits, but most importantly, when we fast forward, and when I had to become a father myself, I said, okay, let me take all the great things that my father taught us, and let me take the things that I thought were just a little bit, I guess, questionable.
Over the top, maybe?
Over the top, and let me try to mesh the two together to try to, I am not my children's friend. I will tell you that right now. I am my children's father. That's one thing.
Right.
Okay? We might have a friendly relationship, but they understand.
Right.
That I am their dad, period. I'm not going to go, oh my God, I want them to be my friend, this new way and era. But I had to blend the two together. There's no doubt. You have to. And so I think having a great wife and being able to bounce ideas back and forth. And look at, you learn. You learn with the four of them.
Oh, yeah.
Listen,
no question.
By the time the fourth one came around, I was a lot better than I was with the first one. I can tell you that. But I still went back to my dad. I still went back to my mom. I continue to go back to my dad. I get advice. Come on. That's what you do. But you have to continue to, you got to listen. And you got to apply, but it's really a great question, and it's a hard answer. But there were things that my dad was definitely over the top on. But I would say 75-80% of the things, I wouldn't change. It really. What my dad says? Here's what he says. He goes, son, you can say all that mumbo jumbo. He doesn't say it like that. Okay,
right,
I'm trying to be respectful to the audience and to the show. But you read between the lines, because let me tell you, he doesn't mince words. Neither do I. But he said it worked, didn't it? He goes, look at you. Yeah. Look where you are today.
It did.
Look
right.
what you accomplished. He goes, so don't tell me it doesn't work. The problem with you is today you're trying to be this guy that's politically correct with your kids. And I'm going, hey, Dad, I think it's working pretty good too, right?
Yeah, right.
I think it's working what I'm doing a little well.
Successful children.
I'm just not the guy that makes you bend over and you take out the belt. And then I don't have a problem with that, right?
Yeah.
We deserve to get a licking, right? They called it a licking back then.
Yeah.
There was a licking, there was a licking stick. You know what a licking stick is, right?
Yeah.
That's the stick to give the licking with. But he had the belt, and he would say, okay, give me 5. And when he said give me 5, he wasn't talking about 5 minutes, 5 push-ups, 5 of anything. You were getting 5 whacks, and it was always 5. And so when you bent over and touched your toes, he would hit you the first time, whack. He'd hit you the second time, whack. He'd build momentum on the third one, whack. And the fourth one, he would fake it. And if you flinched, like if you moved forward,
you get the 5th one.
No, you got an extra one.
Oh.
You were getting the 4th and 5th anyway. But that was an additional one. I didn't agree with that.
Yeah.
You're going to whack today's kids? Just give them the 5 in a row and call it a day.
All right, three boys in the household, and you're the youngest. I would guess there was, and I got 3 boys in my household. There's been plenty of fights. I would assume you, Jim, and George had your battles, did you not?
Oh, my brother Jimmy was without a doubt a great brother, but he was a big bully. He always babysat. Not that my mother and father went out, but when they went out, it was like the moment that they closed that door, you ran for your life.
Really?
Oh man, he was going to get you, headlock you, beat you up, throw you down the steps. It was like survival of the fittest. My brother Jimmy, literally, this is what he did.
And he's a big guy, by the way, folks. He's 6'1", 225 pounds. He's not Spindler big, but he's a big dude.
Oh, but he's definitely Spindler tough, because all Spindlers are tough, right?
Right.
But listen, this is crazy. If my father knew this stuff today, he'd be very...
Come on, at some point you had to have told your dad.
Listen, my brother Jimmy would go, I'm going to give you 10. Like my father would say, you're going to get 5. He would say 10. You know what that meant? That means you had 10 seconds to run, because that's how long it took him to pump the old Crossman BB gun up 10 times, and then he'd come hunting you down.
He would hit you with BBs.
He would hunt you down. You had to run. How do you think I became a hunter? We were playing the ultimate survival. Like Naked and Afraid. I was like Jim Spindler and Afraid. He pumped that thing up 10 times. As quick as he could pump it up 10 times, we were gone. Running through the neighborhood. And he's like chasing you down, shooting you with pellets in the back of the head and the leg.
Unbelievable.
I'm telling you, I grew up. But this is
That's not the babysitter I want, per se. That's all right.
The era
Jimmy.
Today is so much different.
Oh, it's totally different.
It's different. We played kickball, volleyball, off the wall, fast rubber, super pinky. We played them all, man.
What attracted you most toward football? Was it the physicality of it? Was it the ability to collide and violently play a sport and get away with it?
I mean, we just grew up playing football. I don't know what it was, but probably being the youngest brother and watching them play and always tagging along with them and
Were they
always
good?
playing. Yeah, they were damn good. Yeah, they were good. They were big and they were strong and they were Spindlers. We're all mean. We're good at everything we do. I mean, period. That's how it goes. I mean, that's what's instilled in our head.
Yeah.
And so we would go across the street and we play a game called Fumbles. A crazy game, right?
Okay.
I mean, other people call it other things, but it was the political. It's Fumbles. And Fumbles mean if you had the ball, everybody came and just
Beat the hell
smashed
out of
you.
you.
They
Yeah.
just smashed until
Right.
you fumbled the ball and the next guy picked it up. And
Right.
and that's where it kind of began, football. But I can remember vividly, and I don't even know where I got these names from, but from, Scranton is not this thriving metropolis, okay? And when we talked about an alley, some of the alleys were dark alleys. I mean, like really, really dark. And to get from like point A to point B, I had to travel down this dark alley. And it had potholes in it, and it had rats. And I mean, like people today talk about...
Cat-sized rats.
Yeah, cat-sized rats. I mean, they're big. Their tails are as big as cats today, right? And so I can remember I'd get at the corner, and I'd pretend I had a football. And I mean, I can just remember, running and dodging the potholes as fast as I could go and pretend I was a running back. Think how crazy I was. I thought I was a running back then. But I remember envisioning Earl Campbell and Tony Dorsett and going way, way, way back. I don't even know.
Chuck Foreman. And guys like
going
that.
back Hopalong Cassidy, where I don't even know where I got that name from.
Yeah.
I must have heard it from someone at a venue one time or something. But I remember being like 10 years old, pretending I was these guys running down this alley and trying to dodge rats and potholes and whatever else laid in that darkness.
Yeah.
And to this day, I mean, I bring my son back there and I go, that's the alley right there, bud. Take a look at it, and it's still a scary looking alley, bud.
Does he shake his head and just say, man,
He shakes his head off. I mean,
You like going back home, though, don't you? I mean, to
yeah,
Scranton?
I like to visit. I sure do. I mean, but I am proud to say I'm a Scrantonian. I think that's what they call them back there, Scrantonians from Scranton, PA. I don't want anybody to show up here where we're at tonight. Okay. But I feel we're the toughest, hardest working, have the best work ethic out of some of the most quality people in the country today, and I'm proud of that, and I'm glad I came from there. And in another sense, I'm glad I left there as well. I mean, I'm glad I got to experience some of the things, that I did. I mean, I never went back really full time once I went to Pitt.
Yeah.
From Pitt to Michigan and never really went back.
When people mention Scranton or Pennsylvania in general, I think too many times, I think, Spin, we kind of judge certain people, teams, organizations, cities, areas, okay, without even experiencing them. I've had that battle with people here in Detroit before. But when you think Scranton, when you think Pennsylvania, you think Rust Belt, you think toughness, you also think football. Is that a fair critique? Is it football first and foremost in those neck of the woods, and why?
I think when you get closer to the Northeast and you get from, I guess, Pittsburgh in, I just think, our forefathers grew up with this mentality. And when you talk about Western Pennsylvania, you talk about the steel workers, and you talk about Northeastern Pennsylvania, you talk about the coal miners. And so this was probably a way to get out, not out of those jobs, but probably an outlet to either watch football, play football, get away. But I mean, I grew up, just early in childhood days, and we played tag football, touch football, tackle football, every known football on every known surface whatsoever. I mean, we really loved when it snowed, because when it snowed, you can play tackle football like in the parking lots.
Yeah, right.
Like on the asphalt parking lots. You thought that was that was like cushioning, right?
Right.
And so I just think there's this, and now it's grown into this mentality of what you just said when you think about it, because there's tradition there. There's so much tradition from Northeastern to Western Pennsylvania of so many great football players that have come out of those areas that when you grow up, you want to be the next great one.
That's interesting.
You want to, I can remember when I was 9th, 10th, 11th grade, right? I mean, I came up with a word. And I never met Bill Fralick. I didn't know who Bill Fralick was. And I was in 11th grade, and I can remember we had a poster that hung, and I wouldn't be surprised if it still hung there, of Bill Fralick when he was at the University of Pittsburgh. And I mean, he had these huge muscles, and I just, for some reason, looked at him and said, that guy there is a beast. And so when we'd go on the field, I would say, you know how people would say, you got to get crazy?
Yeah.
I'd say, you got to get Fralick. You got to get Fralick.
Why did you have that? Why was that? Is he
idea.
from Scranton, or is
No.
it just because he's from Pitt?
No, I wasn't a Pitt guy then. I didn't know.
I know.
It was like almost, apropos in a sense, because that's where I ended up going. But
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't think that had anything to do with it, but this poster just hung in our weight room. And it was probably a bigger, faster, stronger poster of Fralick
Right.
when he was in high school and just going into college. But
he was a
emulated these individuals. I mean, they were great. When you talk about some of the great players that have come out of that area,
Yeah.
How did you not want to be that? And I mean, and for me, I grew up as my brother's water boy. I mean, he laughs about it today. He sits there and goes, I don't care how big and bad and strong and successful you are. You just always remember, you were my water boy. I wasn't your water boy. You were mine. I'd tell you, go get the water, you'd run. I told you water the field down, you watered that field down. And I mean, and that was the truth. And so I remember.
There was an order, right? There was a pecking order.
There's no doubt. And in that pecking order, part of the deal was this, is that being on that bus and making that Gatorade and running on the field and getting the tea and doing all those things that water boys did on Friday Night Lights, I mean, is something that I wish my son would have had an opportunity to be able to witness or see or be a part of. But having had that opportunity to do this, I watched great high school players, and that's like, there's a big, what does that mean? But there were like names like Castellani and Chris Claus, and these guys went and played Division I football. But I grew up watching them, and they were like watching, the top tier NFL players. To me, that's who they were, right?
Yeah, you idolized them.
And so I remember when I went back to the Pennsylvania Hall of Fame and was, getting inducted into that chapter. And I was sitting up there and I was looking, and it just so happened I was being inducted in with some of those guys.
Really?
It was crazy. And part
Did you talk to them about that? Did you tell them?
It was part of my speech, Shep. It really was. And I said, for me, it's come full circle. And I said, when I was a water boy and I idolized these names, and to be here today and to go into the Pennsylvania Hall of Fame with some of them, I said, really, it's just surreal. It was surreal. I mean, growing up, watching them and just hearing, it was like, I didn't know how good they were.
Yeah.
You just heard people talk about Chris Claus, the tight end from Lakeland, and how great he was, and Jerry Borarski, and this. And I'm like, here I am on a stage with these guys, like 20 years later.
So you go back there. Do people say the same about you? Did you get a sense there was a water boy who was watching you?
I think
when you were in high school is what I'm referring to.
Yes, I get fan mail and I get email and I get all your social medias about people who took pictures with me and look, and one kid I can just tell you that you just asked, Billy Ferrario. He ended up he went to my high school, and Billy Ferrario. I watched last night a video that I had never seen before. It was a VHS video, and I was shooting pool the night before the draft at my dad's bar. So that's 89. And this little kid.
Well, your dad had a bar after he made all the suits and the ties.
Oh yeah,
and
he went to the bar business. He's still in the bar business today. Been in the bar business 30 years now.
Oh, that's cool.
Right?
Okay.
That's how he made a living. I'll tell you that story in a minute. But I'm playing pool with this little kid, and I'm going, hey, that's Billy Ferrario right there. And he had to be, I don't know, he looked like he was 10. And his dad had the camera, and probably a big VHS camera, like back in the day. And he was videoing it, and I believe I let him win. It's probably the only time I ever let a kid win at anything, okay? and so why I mention it, because Billy Ferrario ended up he went to my high school. He was all state. He was all American. He ended up being a very big kid. Started on Wisconsin, was on the starting offensive line when Ron Dane broke all those records,
Sure.
and ended up going to Green Bay, and I think he played 5-7 years. So it was kind of interesting
cool.
to see him as this little kid following me around,
Yeah.
and I'm playing pool with him, and then reflecting, and we're going to get that transferred over. I'm going to send it out to him to Wisconsin and say, probably never saw this, or probably didn't even realize or remember doing this. But if you asked him, he probably remembers those things.
Oh, yeah,
I just
absolutely he
don't
does.
remember them as much.
Yeah. When you grew up, was there a thought of, I want to get out? Not that there's anything wrong with Scranton, but
No.
everybody wants to see something bigger in life sometimes.
No.
Was there ever that mindset, I want to get out of this town?
I never saw Scranton as that bad.
I got you.
Right, I never saw it that bad until I got away from it and went back and realized, what was out here. I'll tell you what.
Because
really
you had a good
changed.
life. I mean, your dad worked hard.
Yeah.
You had a loving
Well,
family.
I wouldn't say. I mean, my dad worked hard, but I mean, I seen paychecks and stubs for a year to date, $12,000.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and you kind of figure, how did you raise 4 children on $12,000?
Exactly.
I mean, he did what he had to do. I mean, we went many months, in the wintertime with not the heat on, and he did what he had to do, and. It's kind of, I don't even want to talk about it. I mean, you hear these stories, and then there's the real stories, and I lived the real story, trust me.
Yeah.
And so, but I never had that sense that I wanted to get out. I mean, now today, if you go back to Scranton, Scranton is like a war zone. It's not good. I mean, it's not what you would hope to envision, and not necessarily where I'd want to raise my family,
Right.
okay? But I would want my family to know where I came from.
Absolutely.
And where I came from and how I got there and what I did to accomplish it, because I still have an appreciation for all those founders of Scranton, all the families that still live there.
Sure.
It's just some of the new blood is just not good blood.
You could have raised your family just about anywhere because of your success.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to stay in this area?
I'm going to tell you, there's 2 things that are really simple, and this is crazy. I mean, a lot of people might not associate with this, and a lot of people might. So when I grew up in Scranton, okay, we didn't have a lot of extra money. So some of the things that my dad always did was he took us camping,
Okay.
which was a cheap man's sport back there, and hunting, which was a cheap man's sport back then. Now today, hunting and camping is like, it's pretty expensive to do those things, believe it or not, right? So when he always took us hunting, always hunting. Saturday, we'd leave at 6 in the morning. We wouldn't get back to 6 at night. It was the greatest day ever. We always spent together. We made sure we always did this. And so 2 things we never had. And I got to control myself here. We never had a 4-wheel drive vehicle. Okay, so we had a cheap vehicle, and we never had property to hunt on. And so, I can cry or I can laugh when I tell this story. So my father on Saturday. So when you don't have property to hunt on, you got to find somewhere to go hunt, and we didn't know where to go hunt.
Okay.
So my dad would look, and he would scope out the lay of the land, and he'd go, "This looks like a good piece of property to hunt." And I knew what was coming next. And he'd look over his shoulder, and he'd look at me, and he'd go, "You got to go do it, son." He goes, "You're the youngest. You're the cutest. You got big red rosy cheeks, and they won't tell you no." And so I learned to humble myself from an early day.
Really?
And so I'd have to go up, and I'd have to knock on the door, and I could remember it. And this is like Saturday at 8 in the morning. And I didn't know what I didn't know, but I mean, I probably saw a lot of things that I wish I would have been a little older seeing now. I mean, women coming with house coats on that weren't house coats, and I'd go, and I would smile with those big red rosy cheeks, and I'd go, "Good morning, ma'am. I was just wondering if me and my brothers can hunt out back for a couple hours for some rabbits. Would that be okay?" With the big, he coached me out, say it and do it. And she'd be like, "That's no problem, son. You go and enjoy yourself." And that's when people used to let you go hunt. And I'd come back with my thumb up going, "Yes, we're in." We'd park the car, we'd jump out, and we knew once we went, and my father always picked great spots, but boom, 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 we'd leave with 12, 15 rabbits. And then, once the farm owner knew how many rabbits were there, he wouldn't invite you back, so we had to go find the next farm. So when I got a chance, I said, "Dad, there's 2 things that I want. I want a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and I want to be able to have my own piece of property." And so when I came to Michigan, I didn't drive a vehicle until I was 20 years old.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Never.
Why? Just didn't have it. Didn't need to.
There was no need. My father told me, run everywhere you go, and you'll thank me later on. That was a Georgism. Run everywhere you go, and you'll thank me later on. So
that's a great one.
So when I got to the NFL and I got a little cash, I mean, the first vehicle I bought, and that's another story, I can tell you that, but the first vehicle I bought was a Ford Bronco, 4-wheel drive. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was in a Bugatti, Jaguar, Mercedes, anything together. I thought I was in a $1 million vehicle. And
Did
I
you
was
call Dad?
Oh, yeah, I called my dad, and I drove that thing home, and I let him drive, and I drove. We thought we were driving, we thought we were like rich. I'm like driving this 4-wheel drive vehicle around, and then I got a few of my buddies, and we went and got a little, probably what we shouldn't have, and then we went back to fields, and we tested the 4-wheel drive out. I came back, I ripped the skip plate off, I ripped things off, the mirrors were gone, and my father was like, like he was acting like it was his car. I go, that's my car. I got money. We'll fix it, right? We had fun last night. But anyway, so we got this 4-wheel drive vehicle. So I got that off my bucket list. Mm-hmm. And then I said, I got to get a piece of property. And so I was watching Great Lakes Outdoors with Rob Trott. And he was doing this big buck night. Okay? Now we're getting back to the point. He asked me why he stayed here, right?
Yeah.
I didn't forget that, okay?
I know.
And next thing I know, I'm starting to see these deer, and they look like elk. I mean, their racks were so big, and huge and like strong. And I was like, oh my God, I picked up the phone. I called my dad. I go, Dad, you can't imagine the size of the deer out here. I go, and they shoot them with bow and arrows. He's like, they shoot them with bow. I go, yeah, they shoot them with bow and arrows. I go, I'm going to call this guy. And I called Rob Trott. He got me a bow and arrow. And next thing you know, I started the bow hunt. And that's why I never went back. I never went back because of the opportunity to see these big, majestic deer, different than I saw them in Pennsylvania. They looked like small little deer. And I was blessed with the opportunity to, like in '94, buy a few 100-acre farm, and we still own that farm here in Michigan, and it's hard to leave that.
And it is spectacular because
you've been there hunting. Shep was there hunting.
I loved.
Shep was at the Sugar Shack hunting.
I loved every single second of it. It's the first and only time, quite honestly, I've ever been hunting. It was with Marc Spindler, and it was fantastic. We're having a fantastic time here at Fifth Avenue. We invite you to come on down because they've got some great stuff going on right now. We're in the patio, and this is where Shep Shower and Shave is taking place. We're also brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Heating and cooling employers are desperate for trained technicians. And Northwestern Tech HVAC is all they teach. Call them today, 248-358-4006. It's Northwestern Tech, the HVAC school that works. Go to northwesterntech.edu. You can get trained, certified, and into the field in only 10 and a half months. What is it about hunting and linemen in football that seem to go hand in hand? Because, offensive and defensive linemen, for the most part, they either hunt or they fish. If I want to break the ice with you or one of your teammates or a current player right now, that's what I do. I start talking about hunting.
So here, we're going to play a little word association,
all right.
Okay, Shep?
All right.
And it's going to give you your answer, okay?
I may not do very well in it.
No, you're going to do good.
All right.
So when you think about hunting, what do you think about?
Deer.
Okay. So let's go further back in time. When you think about hunting, you think about who's the first hunter?
Who's the first hunter?
Who's the first hunter, Shep? It wasn't me.
I don't know. I guess Native Americans, I guess is what it would be.
No, it goes beyond Native Americans. Who was prior to Native Americans? Who? Caveman.
Okay.
Caveman.
All right.
And so
That's a good one, Mark.
You said offense and defensive lineman, and you said hunting? Because we're cavemen.
I got you.
That's what we are, right? Isn't that what an offense? You think about a running back.
Well,
you think about Emmitt Smith. You think about some of these modern day.
I don't know if that's a fair characterization because I don't like to put that on you guys because I think first of all offensive linemen are very intelligent and cavemen.
Okay, then you can say it's defensive linemen. We're cavemen.
I'll say it's defensive linemen. So you've always done it ever since you were little. That's what you did.
Yeah, I just for me, the outdoors is just
Escape?
it's just a great escape, and it's for the most part, to a certain extent, it's free. I mean, just think about this: we're doing this show at this great venue, and we're outside. It makes it even better, right?
Yeah, sure does.
It makes it even better. You
Yeah.
get to breathe, you get to see people, you get to see a lot of different things. I mean, but when you go out there and you climb that stand, and I said, just watch what's going to happen as the sun starts to set and the woods come alive, and the same thing happens. First thing in the morning. I mean, it's like having a cup of coffee on your deck.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee.
Right?
So I don't
Well,
know.
it's like
but you're
having
right. I mean,
anything.
look, the first and only time I ever went was with you. We went outside, and you told me this. I'll never forget it. You said, it's going to be so quiet. It's going to be so peaceful. But when those deer come trotting through, it's going to sound like a train. And you and I climbed up into this stand that I still can't believe held you. And I started to doze off. It was a while. And it was incredibly peaceful. I was in such a somber mood until I reached that stand and I thought, life is good, okay? And it was quiet. And then those deer came up just to the right of us. I'll never forget
That's right.
it. And there were about 3 or 4 of them. I could not believe how loud they were. I thought it was me being loud. And then you just kind of nudged me. Settle down, don't do anything stupid, which is something I usually would have done. And then we went through the whole process, and you stood up, you made a sound, the beer popped its head up, and you got it right through the lung. It was incredible. I mean, it was a rush that I don't know if I've ever been able to match to this day. Maybe it's only because it's happened once for me.
And I've taken many people to on these encounters. I mean,
That's too bad. I thought I was the only one.
You thought you were the only one?
Yeah.
You're the only one. You actually spawned the idea.
Okay,
to do this,
right. Remember, we wanted to do a TV show about it.
I think
It
we
would
did.
have been a great TV show.
For me now, I mean, I still get this same exhilaration, but I mean, I really, I haven't shot a deer in quite some time. I mean, I go and I have fun and I relax and we got a big ranch in Texas now too. Myself and my partners, we got a 3,500, 4,000 acre ranch down in Texas that we fly down and we spend a week. So I have.
Do you hunt there too?
Yeah,
What do you hunt there?
We hunt deer there as well. I mean, we're deer fanatics. But for me on the farm back home, I mean, it's about getting on the tractor, getting outside. Rocco, my son, I mean, he's harvested some great deer out there. But I like to really do the farming aspect of it, to do the planning and the strategy aspect of it. And believe it or not, I mean, well, you probably believe this. I like to do the cooking aspect of it. My good friend there,
Oh,
Keith,
I believe it.
He likes to do the eating aspect of it. But
I believe it because you cooked for me while I was there. Here's the other thing you do. This is what I noticed most. It's about the land. It's about nature.
Sure, it is.
And you're big into making sure you give the deer the proper food and making sure that you're giving back in that area to other animals, don't you? Seriously.
Well, all of the people that are loving this conversation are going to love it, and the ones that aren't going to like it, they're going to hate it. But let me try to make it make sense to them. So once a year, we have our annual meeting, myself and the deer, out on the farm. And the conversation kind of goes like this. Guys, listen. I'm going to plant everything you can ever imagine under the sun for you. And not only that, I'm going to supplement and feed everything under the sun. I said, in exchange, you get to live here, you get to live for free, you get to drink for free, you get to have all the food that you need to last through every single winter. But unfortunately, 3 are probably not going to make it. So you guys go and vote. You can move on to the next farm where there's no food and there's no water and there's no supplemental feed, and maybe 20 of you die of starving, or you can stay here. And every year they just choose to vote, and they seem to stay at my farm, Shep. And I mean, I think it goes back to the old, back in the day. Scylla and Charybdis, the Odyssey or Homer, you had to make a decision. Was he going to go through, the whirlpool where he was going to lose all of his guys, or was he going to go through where the 6-headed, 7-headed monster was? And he said, listen, why should I risk killing, the whole crowd of people versus go and lose 7? But no, we do a great job of managing the farm. But for me now, it's really about, I have probably 20 infrared cameras that are out there at all times. I mean, it's a big hobby and passion of mine. I do most of my hunting now with cameras and things like that, and take pictures and watch them and get the piece of property ready for others.
So you have 4 children. Why was it important to pass that tradition, hunting, down to Rocco and your daughters?
Well, first and foremost, it's one of the oldest traditions known to mankind. I mean, as much as all the
but
people.
Sometimes it stops. Is all.
Well, that's why that's. I mean, that's the bad thing with America today. Too many traditions have stopped, from Sunday dinners to family and friends, and so introducing my children to the outdoors, not pushing it on them. Listen, folks, if you want to learn a quick lesson about, getting your kids involved in something, whatever you're passionate in doing, they're going to probably be passionate in doing as well. That doesn't mean you have to push it on them, right? So if you're passionate about going out every Friday night to the bar, they're going to want to do that. But for us, it was about going to the cabin every weekend and having fun and riding 4-wheelers and doing things. And
brings you closer together too.
Well, sure it does. But I mean, the kids see like Dad really, really likes this, and if he likes it, I want to see what it's all about. And so it got to the point where they begin to argue who's going to go with Dad. And I mean. I brought them, I mean, it's almost sad to say, from the time that they used to have to put a bear hug around my neck, and they climbed that same tree stand that you did, but they didn't climb it. They hung on for dear life, and we climbed it together. And they would sleep on that floor of that tree stand that me and you sat in.
Right.
And so we would let the deer come in. I rarely shot any deer with them. It was just about letting them see. I mean, I got pictures back in the day of owls landing in the tree and eagles landing in the tree, and photographs of that with the kids sitting with me.
That's awesome.
So, these are things that you talk about to this day.
Your kids are diverse. I mean, they're all very good athletes. They're very diverse, too.
They are diverse.
Okay, so you have a daughter who has gone through West Point, and she's going to do something only 2 women in the history of the military have ever done, probably. We don't know that right now. We're thinking. You have a model daughter as well. You have an athletic daughter who plays tennis in college, and your son, who looks like he's a freshman in college, is really about to be a freshman in high school. Why was it looks like diversity was really important for you and your wife?
Well, I don't think you can't pick diversity. It kind of, that just comes with the territory.
No, but you can let it happen. Not everybody has to follow suit.
Well, I think letting the kids and have the mindset of what they want to be involved in. I mean, sports obviously was a really big prerequisite in the Spindler family. And so along comes my second daughter, Dominique, and so we got her involved at an early age in swimming and those type of things. And I could remember, I just told the story like it was yesterday. It was like mid-April, and they were swimming outside, or May, and I got to tell you, Shep, it was cold.
Oh, yeah. Those swim meets can get long.
It was very, very, very cold, and she was probably, she was 8 years old at the time, and I'm telling you, I looked down, and Dominique was a bitcher back then, and I mean, she was bitching, and I mean, her lips were as blue lips can get, and I knew she was cold, so I tried to give her the old Spindler motivational talk. So I stood over to talk to her. I go, if you want to get out of that pool, if you want to be a quitter, I go, if you want to give up, I go, then get out of that pool right now. And she looked at me. She goes, okay, Daddy, thanks. I knew right at that moment. I go, Houston,
I'm different.
We got a problem here. That's where the diversity started, right then and there, right? And so, so she went the modeling route, and she's had a successful career in that, and she's over in Milan, been to Venice, been to Germany, been to. She's been to Greece. I mean, she's been everywhere.
What an experience, though.
So it's been. So, I mean, diversity comes, if you're open-minded to listen to what they have to say. But, but sports is still, and it's not sports. I'm wrong in saying this. It's what we talked about. It's competition. It's being involved in something competitive. And so if you get your kids involved in something competitive early, and regardless of what it is, the arts, band, science,
sure.
I mean, that's huge.
Whatever floats your boat.
You're going to get them ready for the arena of life. You're going to get them ready for success after when the ball stops bouncing.
I'm with you. I think the most important thing is about competition, prioritizing, things of that nature. My second son is now a lead guitarist and singer in his own band. I never would have figured that. I'm not musically inclined, but that's his passion. passion, that's what he wants, I say go for it as long as you're involved and it's keeping you clean. So I think it's a fantastic idea. And obviously you and your wife, primarily your wife too, has done a fantastic job of raising your kids. By the way, our logo, Shep, Shower and Shave, brought to you by Nate. And you can look at his stuff. He's got great stuff. Nate at goldwellstudio.com. You can see his work on Instagram or on Facebook as well. We're at Fifth Avenue here in Royal Oak with Marc Spindler, the former Lion. You were recruited by every school in America.
Everyone.
How did you narrow it down to 5?
Money.
Really?
No.
Come on.
I think my dad had something to do with that.
Let's first talk about the 5. Notre Dame.
Yep.
Penn State.
Yep.
Pitt.
Yep.
I forgot the other
Syracuse and Iowa.
Really?
Yep. And so the Iowa trip was a token trip because my former high school head coach, he was a Hawkeye, and they were recruiting me heavy. I mean, Bernie Wyatt was the recruiting coordinator. Hayden Fry was the head coach at the time, and they had spent many hours in our high school, talking and they did a good job. And so I decided to take one of the trips there as a, like a token trip. But I got to tell you, I didn't realize we flew out in the evening. And as we were flying across the Midwest back then, there wasn't as many lights as there is today. Yeah. But when you got over Iowa City, it was like Dorothy with Kansas. Like I felt like I was like, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
We're not in the Midwest anymore, because Iowa City, if you've never been to Iowa City, at least back then, I can assure you have the time of your life. And anyway, we landed that plane, went to the hotel room, woke up the next morning, and they put a pitch on me, Shep, that you can't even talk about it on the air. But let me tell you, you let your mind run the gamut, and it took place on that trip. And when I got off of that trip and I came back home, I was dressed in Iowa gear from head to toe, and I'm talking about socks and tennis shoes and underwear. And as I got to the bottom of the escalator and Big George was waiting there, I looked at him with a big smile on my face, and it was the first trip I took. I said, "Dad, I'm going to Iowa. I'm going to be a Hawkeye." And he looked at me, he said, "Take that crap off." "No, you're not." "And get in the car." And he shook the head coach's hand and said, "We'll talk to you later." And I went over there and he told me, he goes, "Son, you ain't going to Iowa. And that's the end of it. I'll never see you play."
Right.
And he go, and that was it. And I called them up on the phone the next day. They said, "My dad says I can't come to school." And they're like, "But it's your choice." I go, "No, it's not."
Wow.
And so that's how it happened.
Would it be fair to say there was probably really down to 3? It would have been Penn State, Pittsburgh, and Notre Dame, right?
Yes, and so I was a different cat. I mean, I really had done my research back then. There was the recruiting services back then were just nothing more than a newspaper. Like a really cheap newspaper. And Tom Lemming was huge at that time,
sure,
in a certain extent. And I would read these, and then I would get the rosters, and I'd cross-reference the rosters to the paper. And I would see, because I said, I want to go to college, and I want to start as a freshman. I mean, I really did. In Penn State at the time, Joe was not... he wasn't big in starting freshmen.
Yeah, he wasn't known for that, was he?
He told me that he would. And Notre Dame, Lou Holtz was there, and he was looking to build a program, so I knew I had a shot there. And Pitt, Mike Gottfried, and Coach D'Alonzo came in, and they said, "Listen, I'm telling you, you'll have every opportunity with your talent. If you live up to it, you'll start." And so... a couple things happened. If I wanted to keep it really real, I mean, this is real. I went out to Notre Dame. You don't want to take a recruit like me from the city out to Notre Dame. Back then, there was nothing there. I mean, in 1988, there was nothing in South Bend, Indiana. I mean, nothing. And so, I was like, oh boy, this is just not for me. There was 2 feet of snow. It was freezing cold. It just wasn't. They took me out. They paraded me on the field. They go, "Look at this. This is the Golden Dome, and look at Touchdown Jesus." And they announced my name, and I was like, "Can I go home?" I was like,
you weren't impressed?
No, not at all. It was I mean, in hindsight, but I was immature and looking for what I was looking for. So then I went down to Penn State, and I mean,
it's in the middle of nowhere.
It was in the middle of nowhere. And I'll never forget this. I mean, so the recruits take you out, okay? And so the recruit took me out, and not the recruit, the player takes the recruit out, and we stayed in the dorm room. Joe says everybody stays in the dorm rooms with a rollaway bed. You got to learn to live the student life. And so we went out, and they're like, hey, we're going to take you to a party tonight. We get $20 each. And I was like, hey, that's great, good, okay. I mean, that's a lot of money to me, right? And so we went out. And I'll never forget, at the bottom of the stairs, and this is true, I mean, there's certain things that you remember, and it's not the be-all, end-all, and it wasn't that I was a drinker. My father wouldn't let me there, but, you have a beer when you go on a recording trip sometimes, right? And so I'll never forget this. It was called Red Bull Malt Liquor.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, well, you go Google it. Red Bull. This is Red Bull Malt Liquor. And I heard this noise coming from upstairs. It was a noise I had never heard from before. And when I got up to the top of the steps, Blair Thomas, you remember Blair?
Sure, I do. Yep.
He had a headset on the top of his head. And they told me what he was doing was making music and scratching records. And I was looking at this and I'm going, where am I at? It just wasn't what I was looking for.
Okay.
Right? And so that put Penn State out. I got pictures of me sleeping the next day with Joe Paterno at like the Nittany Lion Inn.
Yeah, right.
And so then I go down
still
to Pitt.
there, by the way.
I go down to Pitt. They pick me up in a 40-foot stretch limo. As I'm driving, they go, do you want to go see courtside of Pitt, Syracuse? Or would you like to go to like the George Washington Inn and take the incline up and eat at the top? And, they have anything from shrimp to lobster to this. And I'm going, man, I don't know what shrimp and lobster is, but I got to tell you, it sounds pretty damn good. And so we got up there, and I'll never forget, this is how you know it's bad, Shep. You had to read the menu. And I was embarrassed. My dad was embarrassed. My mother was embarrassed.
Why?
Shep, I'm from Scranton, PA. I mean, they had stuffed shrimp with crab meat, right? And this is when you know it's bad. They're like, oh, would you like to order first? I go, no, I haven't made up my mind yet, something like that. I'll take what he's having, right? That was like one of those, because I didn't know what any of this food was.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like embarrassing, but yet I knew, I was like, God, I made it. And then from there, Burke Grossman and Tony Saragusa.
Sure.
They picked me up in a Cadillac, I was going to say an Escalade, Eldorado. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget it, with like a top that went down. And in between the two front seats, guess what was there?
Can't even imagine. A woman.
A cell phone. A phone. A car phone.
That's big back then.
Oh, dude, I didn't even know what it was. They're like, hey, call everybody you know. I got on this phone, and I'm driving around, and I'm telling you, listen. And they're like, and they pulled out this wad of money. I'll never forget it. And they're like, we're taking you out tonight. I'm like, what about the $20 I was just at Penn State with? I'm going. And then I stayed in a suite on the top floor. This could be all recruiting violations, by the way. But, I think it was their own money. They just took me out with their own money and their own car, I guess. And I had the time of my life. I really did. And I'll tell you, on top of that, these guys were smart. I mean, they were really smart. My dad went down to a bar. It's probably still there, called Froggy's. Mm-hmm. And so when they walked in, they had bowls of cheese and shrimp cocktail on the bar set up. And, it was like something out of Cheers, as my mother, she didn't say much, but she's like, son, like there was just thousands of people in there. And the next thing you know, a guy looked at me and they go, are you Mr. Spindler? Like they didn't know, right?
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I'm George. I'm Mark. Said, oh my God. And they recruited the hell out of him because they knew he wanted me to either go to Notre Dame or Penn State. By the end of that trip was over, my dad said something I thought I'd never hear him say. Son, you could make this choice wherever you want to go. And I knew they had him hook, line, and sinker at that time. Wow. They got him pretty darn good. And
that is awesome. So you've obviously you've been through all that. I mean, will you be really involved when schools are doing the same with your son?
Well, they just did the same thing with my daughter. I mean, my daughter's on a full,
because you know all the. You all know, the lingo.
Yeah, and I try to play that, but the game has really changed, right?
Sure
to a certain extent. But I mean, I think what you have to do is you have to give good advice. You don't want them to make a poor decision. You want them to have opportunity. You want them to have education. You got to be able to balance the two of them out. And you want to be able to negotiate the best deal that you can get with the best opportunity that you can get. Now all the deals are the same, but, they are a little bit different when it comes to different schools, different universities, different colleges. They offer different things. They have different programs. And so you have to inspect what you expect and hopefully you have an opportunity, first and foremost, to be able to do this, right?
Yeah.
And so, it'll work itself out, but, what kid? He has aspirations. You ask him today where he's top 5, and I think he would say Notre Dame. He would say Michigan. He would say Michigan State. He would say Alabama. And he would say The Ohio State.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting.
And we're sitting here with this nice scarlet red around us. No, there's no doubt. And why would you say those schools? Because when you're thinking just athletically speaking, why wouldn't you be thinking those schools, right? Why wouldn't you be thinking?
If you want to bring academics into it, the Notre Dame and Michigan and Michigan State are pretty obvious.
Yeah.
When you get there, you're the high school player of the year, defensive player of the year.
I sure
Emmitt
was.
Smith was the offensive player of the year in high school the same year.
Tell me more, Shep. Tell me more.
So when you get to Pitt, when do you realize, as dominant as I was in high school, I can still do that at this level?
That's another good question. So when I went to Pitt, this is how it exactly went. And I told you about George. He didn't compromise. So, let me tell you a little story about my daughter first, okay, really quick. So
Which one? You have 3.
We'll just use Isabella, right? So we use Isabella. She's on a full scholarship. She's down there at Cleveland State. It was like a whole deal. Like, drive her down, set up her room. It's like a fashion statement. Like, everything was like a full production of what transpired and what took place to drop her off at college, right? That was like incredible. So here I am. I'm 17. I had a gym bag that was made out of pleather. That was like fake leather. And it said Leech on the side, and it was orange and was supposed to be brown. And so my dad pulls up in a Ford LTD to the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Airport. Doesn't even get out of the car. Son, 2 things. To get to Pitt, you take I-80 west. To get back home, you take I-80 east. If you fail out of school, just keep going west because you're not allowed to come back home. And by the way, don't call home until you're starting. And drove away. Got on the plane myself, landed myself, and that's how I went to the University of Pittsburgh. And so,
don't call home until you're a starting defensive tackle.
Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention this. The last freshman to start at the University of Pittsburgh was Bill Frelick, and that was 10 years prior to that. And there was only 3 others. There was only 2 others. There was only 4 ever in the history to start. That was Bill Frelick, that was Tony Dorsett, and Hugh Green. I don't think Dan Marino started as a true freshman.
I don't believe he did either.
He started as a freshman, not a true freshman, right? Something like that. And so that was put on me. And so I remember going to Pitt, and I just relied on who I was. A good player, and I was just tough. And pugilism, fighting was like my forte, just toughness, right? And I'll never forget, and I had long hair.
I know.
My hair was long, and it was nice looking back then, boy. Right, it was. My wife liked my long hair, boy. I liked it too. But anyway, I remember it was like the first 3 days of training camp, and I'm trying to get acclimated. And I remember the posse came, and I wore my room key around my neck with a shoelace. And they cornered me, and the posse was led by Tony Saragusa. Right, he was a big sophomore at the time, and there were some seniors there.
Same position as you, too.
Oh yeah, and I'll never forget this. And this is how you can ruin someone's career, by the way, mentally. And they came up to me, and here's what they said. They go like, "Hey, freshman, rookie, whatever." I don't remember what it was, but I do remember what they said. They went to my roommate and they said to me, listen, we're coming to your room tonight, okay? Because we got your key from your roommate, and we're going to shave your head bald, and we're going to do something with a banana that I can't say on air. And I was like, and I'll never forget this, I was like, God, I could see them like shaving my head, and so I thought this, and this just happened in one quick second. I took the key off around my neck, and I threw it to Saragusa. And I said, guys, don't get him involved. I said, don't get him involved. I said, it's going to put me and him, my roommate, in a precarious situation. It's going to, whatever I said. I says, just come down and use my key. I says, I want you to keep a couple things in mind. I said, there's no doubt you're going to shave my head tonight. I said, I guarantee it. I says, but I want to let you all know something. I said, the first person that comes through that door, I said, I will guarantee it's going to take 3 plastic surgeons to put their face back together again. I said, what time should I expect you? and I can remember the look on their face, like they're like, this guy is dead serious. He's not kidding me. Yeah. And they gave me my key back, and that was the end of that hazing. And from that moment, I went on that field, and I said, I'm going to have to earn and fight for everything that I get. And I remember on the first day, it was like 3 days in, we put the pads on, and someone shoved me, and I'm telling you, dude, I was when you talk about, I was the Bob Probert of fighting with equipment on, bud. Undisputed, undefeated champion of the world. And I mean, never even came close to losing. And people go, well, you can't hurt people with pads on.
Bullshit.
And let me tell you something, bud. If you know where to hit them, and you know how to hit them, and you know how to push them back and pull them back and give them a kick where it doesn't. I kicked, I lifted her, and uppercuts under the chin like you couldn't imagine. I knocked guys out. And after I knocked the first 3 of them out at Pitt, they were like, you know what? This ain't working. This guy here, there's something the matter with him. He's deranged. And so that's how the folklore at the University of Pittsburgh began for me.
And you started as a freshman.
And I started as a freshman. I started from the first day of practice until the day I walked out of there.
Wow.
I became one of 4 freshmen ever to start. And
do you go back there much?
Never.
Why?
I got blackballed when I left. I left as a true junior. In hindsight, I should have my jersey in a glass case over there, just like the other guys did. And unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. The head coach, he had gotten fired. Mike Godfrey, the defensive line coach, got fired, and I decided it was best for me and my interest to leave, and I left. And so as I left, they said a lot of bad things, a lot of nasty things, and so Dave Wanstead, he invited me back. I met him at a Michigan State Pitt game. I got to talk and address the players, and that kind of was starting to come back because I was at that time the last All-American defensive player at Pitt. They were on a downslide, and then he got fired, and that was the end of it. So I've never gone back. But I think this spring, Narduzzi is a hell of a guy, hell of a coach, and I think it's time to bury part of that axe. But not all of it. I'll never do that for the way that I was treated when I left. But I think it's time to put the selfish side beside me and to bring my son back and let him see what I did and where I grew up and where I made it all happen. There's a big mural on the wall of myself and all the great defensive linemen. They've done a lot of good things there. So it's time for me to kind of bury part of that hatchet and move on.
Did you obviously enjoyed college. What's the biggest difference between college and pro? Playing football and the enjoyment aspect of it is what?
I think there's something that you cannot duplicate when it comes to the collegiate level, when it comes to student body, and it comes to you're doing it, most do it for free in college, right?
Yeah, right. Wink, wink.
But there's something that can't be duplicated when it comes to that type of atmosphere. That college game day atmosphere is something that's really hard to duplicate because it's not college, it's pro, right? Yeah. You're being paid. You got to look like a pro, you got to play like a pro. And then they expect you to play at that level. But, there's just something that's so free-natured and almost spiritual in a different way about college football that just, it's magnificent. It really is. The smell is different.
Yeah. Lastly, just one more thing. What your daughter is about to encounter and the ability that she has, West Point, her brightness, her savvy, you're a big, tough, strong guy. Could you ever done what she's doing right now?
Absolutely not. No, I
what
wouldn't.
makes it different? What makes it a little? It's very unique, obviously. But what's special about what Gabrielle's about to undertake?
Well, just very quickly, two things. One is that I told you I had the talent to play football. I used that talent.
Yeah.
She had the talent to do anything, but she chose to go to West Point when she could have went to Harvard. She chose to go to West Point when she could have went to Michigan. She chose to go to West Point when she could have went to Princeton. And I said, why? And she said, because I want to make a difference in the world. And so I felt that was very strong at that time, and to understand what she endured in that day that we dropped her off, our day, when they say you have 60 seconds to say goodbye to your candidate, and that's it, and you don't talk to them for 6 weeks, and you have no idea what's going on, and they write letters in the dark, and it's heartbreaking even to talk about it to this day. You know, some of the letters that I've read, and you have to write them in the dark with a candle, and so to understand that, you know, the sacrifices that she and all of our armed servicemen and women make on a daily basis to give us this opportunity is something that, you know, I just don't think I had that in me to do it. I really don't. I think forced my back to the wall, I could do it, but I'm never going to take that credit and that glory away for those who do. And understand that she decided to sign up for airborne school, and she graduated. Then went to aerosol school, graduated. Went to Pathfinder school, graduated. Is taking her master's degree at Georgetown, and her PhD was probably going to be at Stanford. And then have an opportunity to go to Army Ranger School to be one of only 3, you know, female Army Rangers. You know, that's something that she's considering, but I am, to be honest, doing everything in my best interest to private talk her out of it, understanding the current climate today. But regardless, the respect that she and all of our servicemen and women deserve is unparalleled to any athlete, any athlete.
Well said. Last question. I want to know what you learned from football, what you've learned from your kids, and what you've learned from your wife.
What I learned from football.
The most endearing thing you've learned from the sport that gave you so much, but you also gave a lot back.
Work ethic.
Okay. What have you learned from your children? Because I think there's a little bit of a misnomer. We always think, oh, the kids learn from us. We can learn from our kids, too. That's really important, I think, that we do learn from our kids. So collectively, what have your children taught you?
They've taught me patience and understanding.
And your beautiful wife?
Love.
It's good.
And passion.
And strength, too, because they're a lot stronger than we are. I love you, man. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great stuff.
All right.
Marc Spindler.
Do it again soon.
Well, one of the best dudes there is. We're brought to you by 5th Avenue here in Royal Oak, Northwestern Tech, and by Nate Knopf, who did our design of Shep Shower and Shave. Glad you were with us today.